For the founders in the space with style and grace, I'm Brittany Antoinette, host of the Not So CEO talk show and founder of The Idea Girl. From work and wellness to bootstrapping and burnout, we cover all bases on building a brand, whether you're a seasoned vet or you're just getting started. Through guest interviews, water cooler combos, and office hours, we're paving way for a new era of Not So CEOs. So grab your notepad and tune in for unfiltered banter on branding, business, and bullshit. Dossé-Via Trenou is a West African astrologer, actress, author, and entrepreneur who views astrology as a tool for empowerment and healing. She helps humans live their best lives through sharing astrological insights, creating musical meditations, and hosting spiritually awakening trips to the Motherland. Dossé-Via uses her cosmic wisdom to cultivate a world where she feels free, and through doing so, she inspires her fellow skymates to feel free too. Dossé-Via's platform and app, KnowTheZodiac, has cultivated a following of over 1 million readers, including Miguel, Drake, Kendall Jenner, and Jaylen Brown. KnowTheZodiac, also known as KTZ, is one of the only apps on iOS and Android run by a team of Black and Indigenous astrologers and developers. KTZ offers in-depth birth chart readings and wildly accurate horoscopes to clients worldwide. Dossé-Via attended undergrad at the University of Southern California, where she double majored in narrative studies and French with a minor in songwriting. After graduating with her master's degree in English education from Columbia University in 2017, she's been working as an entrepreneur and creative. In addition to her work as an astrologer and author, Dossé-Via is the founder of Magic in Melanin, a travel agency which provides humans of African descent with healing homegoing experiences to the motherland to help them reconnect with their roots and ancestry. Dossé-Via's EP of mantras and meditations, Dream with Dossé-Via, provides soulful and healing affirmations to help raise our collective vibration. She's currently exploring her passion for acting through her studies in London, and in October 2024, Dossé-Via will be releasing her first children's book, Melanin Magic, a young mystic's guide to African spirituality inspired by her two children, Nova and Remy, and the adventures they have living together in the motherland. Dossé-Via, thank you so much for being a guest today on the Not So CEO talk show. I am so excited to chat with you today. For those who don't know Dossé-Via, she is the founder of KnowTheZodiac. She is also behind other accounts like the Scorpio Mystique, so all of the Scorpio baddies out there, right? And she is going to talk to us today about her background, all of the cool things that she's doing, from the books that she's written to the EP that she's put out into the world to share for us. In addition to today's topic, I am so excited to talk to you today. How are you doing? How are you feeling?
Hey, Brittany, I'm feeling great. The moon is in Sag. I had a wonderful Pilates class, and it's sunny in London. So I really can't complain. And I'm really grateful to be here on this show.
I want to dive in to you. Who is Dossé-Via? What is your background? And whether that is like your interest, where you went to school, just kind of take us on the ride on what your childhood was like and how you evolved into the amazing human being that you are today.
Wow, it has been a journey. Life is so trippy. So I'm Dossé-Via Marine Trenou, and I was born October 23rd, 1992 in Boulogne-Billancourt, France, which is not very far from Paris, France. And my parents are from Togo, a small country in West Africa. And my ancestors are from the surrounding regions of Benin and Nigeria. So I'm an Ewe and Yoruba woman. I lived in America most of my life because my dad's job moved us there when I was 3.5. So we were in Texas, a big change from France. But interestingly, it was the fact that racial relations in France were not good at the time for my dad, and there was racism. And there were actually better opportunities for him as an engineer immigrant in America. So I grew up in an interesting household where we had traditional African values while surrounded by American culture. At the age of 7, we left Texas and moved to Georgia, and I spent most of my life in Georgia from 7 to 17. My educational background was partially in international school and partially in the suburbs of Georgia at public school. So I had the experience of being with people from all sorts of backgrounds at first, to being one of the only Black girls in my class in the suburbs of Georgia. And I feel like both shaped me a lot. And that's just the best way to look at it. By the time I was in my last 2 years of high school, my mom had moved us to Atlanta because she wanted us to get the IB diploma. And there was a school there that offered it. So I got to experience a more urban education surrounded by Black people. So after a lot of suburbia, I was back in the city and got to just feel a bit more seen and surrounded by people like me. And I was also ready to leave Georgia by that time. When I was 17, my dream school was the University of Southern California. And I just did everything I needed to get in, and I got in, and I moved to California. A part of me, I realized, really also was excited to get into modeling and acting there. But I used university as my main reason to go. But when I went there, I did become a model and start exploring more of acting there. But there was always this part of me that was saying, okay, you can't do only creative full time. You have to focus on studies. So even after I graduated from USC and I was signed to an acting agency, I decided to apply for my master's degree to become an English educator at Columbia University. And so once again, I got in, thankfully, and I used that as an opportunity to get signed to a modeling agency and continue my acting studies. But my main focus was still school. And it was when I graduated from Columbia in 2017 with my master's degree in English that I realized I couldn't do the typical American educational system because I didn't like the way that the school to prison pipeline was influencing our Black youth. Yeah, I couldn't. Even if I made my class as amazing and Afrocentric as possible, I didn't like the systemic way that our Black youth were being funneled into special education courses without maybe thinking if there were other needs that could be met, such as culturally sensitive books that actually apply to them, because I didn't feel right judging them and their reading level based on like them having to read A Tale of Two Cities by Charles Dickens when maybe a book by what's this amazing author, I love it, Reynolds is his last name, but he creates incredible books for Black children. And I would want to see more of those books in the classroom. So I had to make a decision. I remember getting an anxiety attack one day after student teaching because I felt like it was just not in alignment with my values.
Wow.
Yeah, and that's when I realized, okay, I may have spent several tens of thousands of dollars on my master's degree, but I think I'm going to work for myself full time, at least to
Right.
begin. And I'm glad I made that decision because, as we'll talk about later in the show, when it comes to my astrological journey, all of the time that I was in college and in grad school, I had been growing my astrology brands. At first, because it was a passion, but eventually it became a viable career option. So
Wow.
when I decided to take the leap, I was just making a few, maybe barely being able to make enough to pay rent on my own. But I was like, if I go and do this full time, who knows what could happen? So I'm glad I made that decision because in 2017, I became a full-time entrepreneur and creative, and it's sustained me ever since. And I moved to West Africa in 2018, and I've been living in West Africa as my main base ever since.
Wow, that is such a beautiful journey. You started your company, Know the Zodiac. So, can you just talk a little bit more about Know the Zodiac and exactly the steps that you took to get there in establishing such a reputable, well-known, and trusted source of astrology information?
Absolutely. So I thank my parents for my love for astrology because they were into it before me. And my paternal grandmother was also into reading cowrie divination in West Africa. So I also now realize the more I study her life, because she was also a lawyer and a wonderful public advocate of women's rights. But she had this deep spiritual side to her as well. So even when I look,
Wow.
yeah, and my different, more
Is the
practical,
cowrie divination, I forgot, is it called Obi? Throwing Obi?
yeah, that's in Yoruba spirituality, yes, OB divination, exactly.
Yes.
Exactly. So that's actually indigenous astrology. And so Western astrology is more what we know now of about the sun sign and a certain sign like Scorpio or Gemini. And then like Venus and Mars, those are more Western, which I specialize in. But I now am very passionate about connecting Western astrology with its indigenous roots, which we'll talk about more. But the way it all began was through my birth story, actually. I am a Scorpio, but it all happened because I was born by C-section and my parents could choose an approximate date for when I was to be born. My dad, who's a Taurus, has an older sister. She's a Scorpio born October 24th. And so he's always admired his sister, but since they're opposite signs of the zodiac, they can also have like a deep, intense dynamic where sometimes they get along, sometimes they don't. And on one of those days where they did not get along, my dad decided to tell my mom, who was still pregnant, about to pop me out. He was like, I think we should change the date because they had said they were going to have me born on October 24th. That was one of the options. And he changed his mind at the last minute, called the doctor up, and said, actually, it'll be October 23rd. It's so funny to think about this. Like I was just chilling in the womb and my parents dating my exact date of birth to try to just, I guess, have me have my own destiny. So I'm not mad about it because I love my chart. I still made the cut as a Scorpio. I have a Virgo moon and Scorpio rising. I'll explain what those mean for people who don't know. But when I did not know myself what this meant, my parents, when I was like 8, 9 at the dinner table, just acting myself, would tell me things like, watch out. The way you're acting is very Scorpio like. It reminds me of my dad would be like, it reminds me of my older sister. She also would be very stubborn. She also would be this. She also would be that. So obviously he was having some sort of PTSD that his daughter was bringing up. And so I was like, what are you talking about? I was literally like, Scorpio this, Scorpio that. And since he was an engineer, we had access to the internet early. And this was before the Google days. So I was on
Oh
askjeeves.com.
my gosh. I remember askjeeves.com. Wow. Wow.
Askjeeves.com. Like I was searching, what does it mean to be a Scorpio? What is a Scorpio? And that's how it all began. The original astrologers of the internet had taken the time to describe me well enough that I was hooked. I felt seen. I was like, my dad thinks I'm stubborn. I'm just misunderstood. I'm just deeply emotional. Like I was just like, I'm not necessarily as down to earth as his earth sign Taurus side is. So as I was learning about myself, I was confirming things that I knew about my parents, and I knew about my siblings, but I had never seen an astrological language. Then I realized you're not even just a Scorpio. I must have found my first birth chart calculator at 8 or 9 or 10 years old. Also, thanks to Ask Jeeves, typed in my date of birth, typed in my time of birth, typed in my location of birth, and was shown my entire birth chart. That's when I saw you have we all have different planetary placements in each potential planet. So from the sun to Mercury to Venus, all the way to Pluto, because Pluto counts as a planet in astrology. And so my mind was blown. I became completely geeked out on studying my birth chart, writing things in my journal, studying my parents' birth chart, understanding why there's challenges because my mom is a Leo, my dad is a Taurus. So that's just three
Woo.
fixed placements.
A lot of
Um,
fixed energy.
a lot of
Everybody's
fixed,
stubborn.
right? Like deep projection, dad. That's projection. On top of that, my dad's Jupiter is in Scorpio. I have to remind him of that. I have to be like, Dad, first of all, Scorpio energy brings you up.
That's the beautiful thing about astrology though, because we all have every part of the zodiac. It's almost as if like I feel like if we had the perfect person, it would be every single sign combined.
I like that. I like the way you said that. Yeah. And some people do have a blend of almost every single sign. And then some people really do have like an emphasis of one sign. But it's exactly what you said. Most people don't realize because they'll just read their horoscope in the back of a magazine and know their sun sign and familiarize themselves with that. But I became passionate at a young age about getting to know my multidimensional nature and then those of my friends and family. So for years, it was just my passion, my hobby, my little nerdy activity. And it was when I got to USC at 17 years old that my friends told me about Twitter, and they're like, you should create a Twitter page. At the time, it wasn't even for astrology, it was just my own personal Twitter. And then I had the idea of actually, like, what if I created a Twitter page that I didn't tell anyone about? It was just for Scorpios, and I wrote about Scorpio, like what it feels like to be a Scorpio, kind of an ode to my younger self, but in a more digital setting. And I did that. And within a few weeks, people were just resonating, like random strangers on the internet were finding my Scorpio Mystique page. So, what I thought was just my little online diary actually became a community rather quickly. I do attribute that to the fact that it was 2011 at the time. So, Twitter was also in its beginning days. So, I do think the timing of it was good. And then a few, like maybe a year or maximum two after starting my Scorpio Mystique page, there was Katy Perry, who's a Scorpio, born October 25th, who followed Scorpio Mystique. And I remember when one of my followers told me that, and I was like, really? That's huge. At the time, she was the most followed person on Twitter. And so something in me at that time was like, maybe this isn't just a hobby. Maybe I could create a whole community for all the signs. I mean, I love speaking about Scorpios, but as an astrologer, I know that first, I'm not only a Scorpio, and other people would probably want to know about their sign. So that's where my business mind kind of came in. And my partner at the time, he had discovered my Twitter page, which I had kept as a secret. He discovered it like a few weeks in when I had left it on my computer. I think a part of me wanted him to discover it, actually. Yeah, definitely. And so he was like, there's lots of potential here. And so because he was into tech and also pretty nerdy in the tech scene, he did help me set up my first OG website, which is completely different than my current one now. But I'm grateful for that because he showed me that it is possible to make money on the internet. I remember the first birth chart reading I offered, I just offered it for $1 because I wasn't sure if people were going to buy. It was like 2013. So I tweeted, I'm like, you want me to read your chart? Offering readings for $1. And I got like 100 orders in like an hour. And I was spending all night like working on them. And I'm like, okay, maybe I should increase my price. Maybe I should increase my price.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because the demand was there, obviously.
Yeah.
Oh my
Mm-hmm.
gosh. That is so amazing how you were able to use something that you were super passionate about and you were able to essentially use that as a way to start your professional journey. That just, starting on askjeeves.com I'm still tripped up about askjeeves.com like cuz that just reminded me how old I am. Right?
Me too, me too. I'm gonna go look up and see when it was incorporated. Because yeah, I
Right. Like I remember being on the internet during that time. So it's just so crazy to even think about that. So just by you starting off talking about your experiences and ode to your younger self of being the Scorpio big sister that you probably wish you had when you were a child to
Mhm.
help you understand yourself and then saying, you know what? If Katy Perry's following me, can do this probably full time for everybody. How was it like just in comparison from like then to now? Because I'm sure the platform has grown even more astronomically, especially when it comes to offerings. Exactly. Tell me where Know the Zodiac is currently today.
Oh, wow. So I'm very excited because Know the Zodiac is going through its Jupiter return. So Jupiter every 12 years will return to the sign that it was in when you were born. And that's viewed as like your new luck is starting, your new cycle of luck. So when KTZ was born, and I started the KTZ Instagram and Twitter in 2013, Jupiter was in Gemini. And so now Jupiter, the planet of luck, is in Gemini 12 years later. So it's been about 12 years of KTZ. I feel like we are in a way being reborn. So in 2019, I created the KTZ app, a free app. And I created it because I had been offering daily horoscopes consistently for 4 years on Instagram. And I saw that, yes, it's amazing to have grown this community on Instagram and on Twitter, but I want to be able to have my own platform. I don't want to just rely on Instagram and Twitter. I also had a nice email list by then. And I'm happy with the 2019 app, but there was a lot of drama with developers. I've had to learn a lot of, unfortunately, sometimes the truth that when you're a confident Black woman entrepreneur and you work in a male dominated space, even sometimes with fellow Black men, which can be hard to face, there can be a lot of power struggles on their end of them not always just wanting to listen to you as a boss, and whether it's conscious or not, there can be some sabotage. So I feel like I had to learn a lot of lessons. I took a lot of accountability of not being too naive and trusting, because it was often the developers that would come to me with like the opportunity of doing an app. But I realized that there were some unfortunately, their intentions were not aligned with my values. So the original 2019 app, while we had a good amount of people download it, several thousands of people, great engagement, when we hit those speed bumps with the developers, I considerably slowed down the development of the app, other than what the MVP already was, which was an easy way to access your daily horoscopes and your weekly horoscopes. And around that time, I got my first book deal opportunities to write Signs and Skymates, my hardcover book about astrological compatibility. And so what I love here is it's a full circle moment of, yes, I had invested tens of thousands of dollars in my master's degree at Columbia University in English education. And I was like, will I ever use this? But that was one of the reasons my publishers were interested. They were like, oh, you got your education at Columbia, you got your master's in English education, so you probably are a great writer, and you're an astrologer, and you have this platform, and you've been writing for years. We discovered you that way. So all of it interacts, like years and years of offering free daily horoscopes, growing my community, led to the book deal opportunity, which also led to me being able to write a children's book on African spirituality that comes out in October. And that's a full circle moment because I still get to be an educator. As an author, I get to educate kids, and hopefully my book will be in the schools that I hope will evolve beyond the systemic issues that I'm not aligned with. So I'm really grateful how my journey of committing to KTZ has opened up pathways beyond what I expected. And now where we are now, the fresh start is that I spent the past 15 months investing and bootstrapping into the evolved version of the KTZ app, which will still be free to download, but we will offer premium subscriptions with much deeper astrological readings and offerings within the app. And so that's going to come out in August. And I feel like it's the beginning of a new journey, because since I really learned from my mistakes with previous developers, built a really strong team and a really strong foundation, I feel like the new journey is just growing KTZ even beyond social media in my own universe, the KTZ universe.
This is so exciting, but I want to go back and talk about your journey into being an author and how pretty much everything, it's almost as if like it came full circle. Like your degree in English, your master's degree in English did not go to waste. It literally was a setup for success by you uniting your interest for astrology and using that as a way to be now become an author. I want to talk about both of your titles and essentially what was it like creating your first book and what was it like holding it in your hand?
Oh, wow. Thank you. Yes. I love that. So I wrote Signs and Skymates as I was talking about full circle. When I saw Scorpio Mystique back in I started it in July 2011. So July 31st will actually be our 13-year birthday of Scorpio Mystique's first tweet, the tweet that started it all. Maybe less than a year after starting that Twitter page, I was just having fun writing this book called Scorpios and Skymates. And it was so simply going to be focused on Scorpio's astrological compatibility with the signs. And I was going to self-publish it as an ebook and then print on demand. And so I wrote it. I was having so much fun. I interviewed fellow Scorpios for it. It was so much fun. And when I decided to publish it as an ebook, I think one day I saw one typo in the ebook. And so I'm like, oh my gosh, got to take it off, got to fix that because I have a Virgo moon. I took that off my site and never put it back on for years. So in the back of my mind, I was like, I will eventually release this book, but maybe there's a reason that I'm, delaying. And yes, there's lots of reasons. My Mars is in Cancer, so I don't always have that impetus. I have to wait for that perfect emotional moment. There's so many reasons. My Chiron is in Leo in the ninth house. So sometimes putting myself out there consistently also can feel scary. But I also realized the universe was setting me up, like you said, because right when I almost forgot that I had written a book already 8 years ago, I got an email from my now agent who's like, I'm a fan of your astrology work. Have you ever, well, actually at the time, she didn't even say astrology work. She said, I've seen you on social. I'm a fan of your work. Have you ever considered writing a book? When we had our first meeting, I was like, interesting. Actually, I did write a book called Scorpios and Sky Mates. And I could see myself doing the same, like doing it for all of the signs, either as a series or a combined astrology book. And so she was like, well, that's amazing that you already have a book that can be a proposal that we show to potential publishers. However, when I first approached you, I was even just more interested in your journey of moving to the motherland. Because at the time I had been living in Africa for 2 years, raising my children there, and she was interested in that repatriation journey. And so I was like, that's cool. I kind of like the fact, because at the time I had been really associated with astrology. So I kind of like the fact that she also saw my multidimensional nature. She's a Sagittarius, so that aligns with who she is. And I was honored, and I was like, let's put a pin on that, and let's do the astrology book as our first proposal. And that's when I thank my past self for having been so nerdy, wanting to self-publish a book, even though she didn't see through with it, because the work had been done. Who knew? My little 21-year-old self had set me up so that that was my book proposal. I didn't even have to start over. I just had to make some tweaks and add an
Wow.
introduction. And then we ended up getting 9 publishers bidding on the book. 9 different publishers for my first book wanted me to.
That's insane.
Yeah, it was amazing. It was so writing that book was my Saturn return journey. I was 29 years old. My Saturn is an Aquarius in my third house of communication. So that was my journey to have to show up time and time again and do that same process that I did for Scorpios and Sky Mates for all 12 signs of the Zodiac. But I was really passionate about writing an introduction to that book to help people learn how to understand the placements of their chart first before even thinking of their compatibility with someone else. So
Mm.
my hard book is 736 pages long, and the first half is all about becoming your own astrologer, understanding your chart. Then the second half is like the nitty-gritty of your compatibility, romantic, friendship, family with other signs.
I want to talk about magic and melanin and what inspired you to start your traveling agency, and what do you hope participants gain from these homegoing experiences to the motherland?
Oh, yeah, that is another major passion. And I thank Scorpio Mystique and Know the Zodiac because I was able to grow Magic Melanin through a lot of like the funds I was making from my astrology business. That allowed me to reinvest in another really important purpose of mine, which is as I was going through my decolonization journey and my ancestral remembrance journey, which meant just returning back to the motherland after more than 9 years away from it. So the last time I had been was before like my homegoing. I hadn't gone back since I was 15. And so my grandmother, my maternal grandmother, who was the last living grandparent I had at the time, she was going back and forth between living in Togo, where she was based, and coming to see my family in Atlanta. And in 2017, when I was right about to start my second semester at Columbia, my mom told me, because my grandmother was blind, she told me, your grandmother's ready to return back to Togo. And I think that this time it's going to be for good. I don't think that she's going to be doing another journey back to America. And so I was in Hawaii with my partner at the time and our daughter, and I was feeling very abundant because we had just dropped Scorpio's yearly forecast. So I was seeing a lot of money coming through and I felt really good. And I was like, I want to invest this into a homegoing trip. It's been 9 years. You haven't even seen me in my African world. So I wanted to show my partner and my daughter what that was. And I wanted to accompany my grandmother home. And I was really lucky because Ethiopian Airlines, which later became a partner of Magic and Melanin, had just started offering direct trips from New York. I think it was it was from Newark to Lomé. And before that, it was like you either had to go through Ghana or you had to fly into France and then do France to Lomé. So the fact that they were doing direct nonstop trips and they were within our budget also seemed like a sign. So I booked my ticket, went with my family, accompanied my grandmother back. As soon as I stepped back after 9 years, I just felt really rooted and calm and centered. And me and my partner already kind of understood that we thought that after I finished grad school, maybe we were going to experience a few years in France because we both enjoyed France and he learned French and everything. But we looked at each other after a few days and of seeing how calm our nervous systems were in the motherland and how happy our daughter was. And we're like, maybe after grad school, we can consider actually coming and being here and being closer to my grandmother. I remember during the last leg of our trip, we had gone to the beach and I saw three beautifully melanated women having so much fun at the beach, having photo shoots, jumping up in the air, just having the best time. And I remember telling my partner at the time, the only thing that was missing from this trip is I would have loved to actually come with my girlfriends from Colombia. I think they would have absolutely loved it. And I hope that I can do that. And when I got back to New York and showed my friends the images, they were like, this is amazing. And I would love to come see the motherland too. Are you going to go back soon? I'm like, yeah, I'm going to go back at the end of the year for Christmas. They're like, could we come? And I was like, yes, please. So we spent the next few months planning their trip. They came to the motherland. We had an amazing time, but it also had some triggering moments. And that's really important because these are two African American women who are African ancestrally, but don't have a direct tie to the motherland the way that I do. So there is a level of privilege, even if I opened up my home to them, there's a level of privilege of them coming and me being more rooted and having already this family structure and everything is new yet familiar to them. So sometimes it would be triggering just even as an African American woman who's been told that Africa is only about poverty and all of those things, the things that America shows you, to go to Africa and actually see that there can be lots of wealth, there can be huge homes, you can have a chauffeur, you can have nannies to help you with your children. So they got to see a side that is not shown to them, which they both really enjoyed, but also had them questioning um, some of the struggles that they're experiencing in America and wondering, oh, could things be easier if I moved back to the motherland? But the answer is not that simple. Even I was just figuring that out myself. I was like, yes, I'm idealistically happy to be home and I want to help other people, like my friends, come home. But there has to be a lot done in continued decolonization to heal this wound that centuries of displacement due to enslavement has created between Africans and African Americans. There's also language barriers. My parents had not taught me my indigenous language of Ewe. So even though I am Togolese, the local Togolese still viewed me as an American more than local Togolese. Sometimes that could feel painful, but I understood because I couldn't always communicate with them other than when we spoke French. But to really be Togolese in their eyes is to speak your indigenous language. And so all of this led to, even with the highs and lows of the trip, but there were definitely more highs than lows, but I had to face the reality that homegoing is not just going to be peaches and rainbows. By the end of the trip, my friends and I were like, this was amazing. And we know that there's going to be more people when we get home that are going to want to come. And so that's when I got back and I just had this idea. I had already thought of the name Magic and Melanin as like a Tumblr name, thinking I was going to just share inspiring information about melanin and our the magic of embracing our African roots. But then I was like, I have that domain name saved, but I actually think this applies more to the magic of coming back to the motherland, a melanated world, and healing your relationship with it. And so I pivoted from it being like a lifestyle blog to it being the name of my agency. And I actually remember it was during the Capricorn new moon of 2018. Um, January 16th, 2018 is the birthday of Magic and Melanin. And if you look at Magic and Melanin's chart, it has like 7 Capricorn placements. So a whole bunch of Capricorn energy. And that makes me realize it was more of an ancestral thing because Capricorns they're ruled by Saturn. Saturn is the planet of ancestors and challenge and responsibility. And I realized that I felt like there was something higher than me that was like, go ahead, create the LLC, go ahead, start the email list, go ahead, create the Instagram page. Like it was just kind of guiding me to create this business. And so it started off with word of mouth. My friends told their friends, and I had friends who were interested as well. So the first inaugural trip, which took place in December 2019, was with a group of 10 women and 1 man. And my partner at the time also was helping me co-facilitate the trip. One of the people who came on the trip is one of my close friends, Rachel Cargill, and she had such abundant energy
Stop
about it.
playing. You know, Rachel was just literally on the podcast. Like, I absolutely love Rachel. It's such a small world.
It is such a small world. I think
It's
it's
such a small
Sagittarius. And I just love the energy of how we met. We met through a Sagittarius friend, Lauren, who had invited us to her.
Lauren
Um,
Ash.
Lauren Ash.
I worked with Lauren. I did the rebrand for Black Girl in Home a few years ago.
Oh my gosh.
It's
No,
such a
it's a
small, it's a
it's
small world.
wild.
Yeah, because Lauren is a Sagittarius. Yes, I know Lauren.
Yeah, she
Lauren's a
is a Sagittarius.
Sagittarius, and that's how we originally connected. Be like, she's like, "Oh my God, I was so drawn to you." Da, 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 da. And I'm like, "Oh, like she's like, are you a Sagittarius?" I'm like, "No, my moon is though."
Yes, that's the thing.
It's such a small world.
Small world. And so I had gone to her Root to Rise dinner. And when they did the introductions, usually I would have just introduced myself as an astrologer. And something told me at the end of my intro, because I was just about to launch my first trip, I was doing promo. Something told me, let me just tell them also that I have this homegoing agency on top of being an astrologer and that our next trip is in a few months. And I'm so glad I spoke up because Rachel DM'd me the same. I had not known her before. That's where we met. And she DM'd me the same day. And she's like, I want to go to Africa. I can pay full price. Just let me know how so I can go. And so that even just she didn't know, but that was really inspiring as being new in the entrepreneurial space. And most people had done payment plans, which makes sense. But for her to just support, like straight up, she just met me at the event. She heard me talk about Africa and she's just felt called to go. That was really powerful and motivation as well. So she and the group of other 9 women, we went on that trip. It was one of our best trips. We did Togo, Benin, and Ghana. So we try to offer multiple countries in a 2-week experience so that people can see what the different cultures are like. There's similarities, there's differences. Every year we add new countries, well, every other year. So since then, we've also added Ivory Coast, we've added Nigeria, and soon we'll be adding Senegal. And I also have offered 3-month residency programs for most people who have already done the 2-week trips and who are considering repatriating to the motherland. So my intention with Magic and Melanin is for a safe place for people to heal from all of the programming about the motherland. I feel like everybody of African descent, everybody of the diaspora deserves to be able to return. And in my vision, it would even be reparations that come from the governments that enslaved us. And it wouldn't even just be Magic and Melanin. Any agency that has the right values to help people return and be rooted should be able to facilitate these trips with the help of reparations from Portugal, France, England, Spain, Germany, all the colonizing countries, because this displacement has had ripples of trauma and pain. So I think the first step is getting people back home and letting them feel what it feels like. Even if they don't know specifically what home is, the majority of Afro descendants were coming from the west coast of Africa. So that's already a good start to get them back there.
As you were mentioning, it is so important for us to figure out what our roots are and just going back into who we are as individuals. Because again, we live in a world where everyone tries to tell you who you are, and from music programming you, from television from programming you. There's nothing like knowing who you are. It's like know the zodiac, right? Knowing who you are, knowing where you come from. And I think that's just a beautiful thing, especially when it comes to just self-awareness. Self-aware, I say this all the time. Self-awareness is a gift. So now you've done a lot of different things. So of course, we have your books, we have Know the Zodiac, we have Magic and Melanin, but you also have an EP, Dream with Dossé-Via, which combines music and meditation. How do you see the intersection of these elements contributing to spiritual growth and healing?
Oh, wow. Yeah. So, like you've been saying a lot, music is one of the biggest ways to program humans. And that programming could be for positive or negative purposes. And unfortunately, mainstream music has been leaning more towards, not the most positive purposes, whether it's even just dumbing down ourselves with kind of unnecessary repetition of certain tunes and vibrations and frequencies, or literally through the words that some of the music we listen to consistently teach us. We often focus on the negative effects of certain rap, but even in pop music, when it comes to like dealing with heartbreak, sometimes it's just more focused on keeping people in a lower vibrational frequency. But as a lot of metaphysics has taught us, words have really powerful influences on our minds, our bodies, our spirit. And I often believed, I read the book The Secret ever since I was 17 by Rhonda Byrne, which is all about the law of attraction and being able to change your life through the frequency of your thoughts, through reprogramming your mind to have thoughts more geared towards your success and evolution, and really towards having faith and deep love in yourself. And because I had that philosophy from a young age, I would write mantras and poems and affirmations for my own self. I also minored in songwriting at USC, so that helped me when it came to creative thoughts. And I had a close friend, India, who worked as a producer and an artist and a singer herself. And so when I was listening to her music and seeing her partner with whom she was working and how naturally they were making things happen, something told me, and it was around the Sagittarius new moon, and my Venus, which is all about creativity, is in Sagittarius, and India is a Sagittarius as well. So there was deep alignment. And I was like, I've been writing these mantras and I use them as affirmations for myself. And this was in 2017. I was like, would you be down? Like, if I send you the recording of my audio, would you and your partner be down to create some musical meditation that matches the energy of the audio? And she's like, yeah, sure, send it. Let's see what we can do. So the first one was New Moon Mantra. And the affirmations that I was saying there where you are here for a reason. By prioritizing your healing, you are already healed. Life loves you infinitely and abundantly. Step into your abundance. Imagine yourself already there. And it continued from there. And India and her partner understood the assignment. Because they must have been inspired by the mantras. And then on top of being incredible producers, like her partner has won several Grammys for his work. I was really lucky that they were just like, sure, we'll create this. And of course, we work together professionally and they're getting a share of my EP stream commissions. But it was such a beautiful collaboration. It felt as if it's wild that the words came first and then they made music with it. It felt like it was already like created side by side, but really they were inspired by my words. And so what happened with that is when they created that, I just put it on SoundCloud for some people, but I just kept listening it for myself, and it was changing my life. Because it was 2017. By 2018, I had decided to move to Africa. I was pregnant with my son. Things were just changing. I was diving more into my business. So it was a gift for my own self first. Put it out on SoundCloud for people who enjoyed it. A lot of people did enjoy it on SoundCloud. Continued to write mantras through my homegoing trip. I was inspired. So I wrote Supermoon, which is about coming home to yourself, loving yourself, discovering what you have to leave behind. I wrote Eclipse, which is about being accepting the fact that life is constantly changing and we are emanations of life. So we have to let ourselves change. I wrote Passion Play, which is a very loved mantra about like viewing work, changing the connotation of the word work and viewing it as playing with passion. So that was a Capricorn full moon mantra. And I love that one as well. And then in 2020, that's when I decided, after 3 years of using the mantras for my own self healing, it was in 2020 that I decided, actually, I'm ready for this to become an EP. And this was also because I had written Love Mantra at the end of 2019 after separating from my long term partner of 6 years at the time. And so I needed to remind myself of the infinite nature of love and the fact that I myself am love and that love is all around me. So I wrote that. That was the first time I wrote it as a stream of consciousness. I just picked up my phone, pressed record. I happened to be at my friend India's apartment in Los Angeles, and I just did a stream of consciousness mantra about love and sent it to her. And then a few days later, she sent me the completed version with the music, and it was so amazing. And so that was when I was like, you know what? It's time. It's been 3 years of like creating this as a way to reprogram my brain. It's time to put it together in an EP and transition too. And so I was missing her so much. And so I decided to release the EP in dedication to her because she's a Gemini. She taught me a lot about the power of voice. She also is an educator. She taught me so much about just not only the power of voice, but the power of prayer. She would always be like, il faut prier. C'est très important. C'est très important de prier. If there's one thing you remember, always pray, always express gratitude, always talk to God, tell God what you're seeking. Thank God in advance for what you have. Thank God for your health, your family's health. So, without her necessarily knowing the modern terms of mantras, affirmations, she instilled that type of energy in me. So, on 8/8/2020, which happened to be the date that was her funeral, because she passed away during COVID. So, she passed away in
Oh
March, but
man.
yeah, we couldn't have the funeral until August, and I had already set that the date would be August 8th. And then my mom told me later that the funeral date was going to be August 8th. So that also was a Lionsgate portal. My midheaven is in Leo. So there was a lot of alignment, even astrologically, with the release of the EP. And I'm very, very grateful for the reception. It goes to show that you can keep something to yourself if necessary for years, and in divine timing, it can be received beautifully when you're ready to share. In a culture where we always think we have to be producing and immediately sharing it with others, I'm really glad that I had taken the time to gift myself these affirmations and musical healing and then present it to the world in a time where people really needed more nurturing spiritual healing because it was lockdown time for many people around the world. And that a lot of people just said it calmed their nervous system down to play that EP. And they noticed a lot of manifestation, positive shifts through playing that EP. So yeah, I am very, very, very grateful for Dream with Dossé-Via. And ever since, I have not created anything else yet because I still feel like it's still working its magic for everyone who listens to it. So
Dossé-Via, your journey is so beautiful. And I'm so grateful that your grandmother was able to just witness you take something, like just literally just live in the embodiment of who you truly are since her passing. I'm really sensitive about grandmas. I lost both of my grandmas, and like, there's just something special about them. Like,
yes,
to
very
me,
special.
Thank you so much for sharing that with us. So now I know everyone that's listening, they're hearing Capricorn full moon and Saturn return and Capricorn return. So I want to dive into the episode topic now before anyone is like, wait, if they say one more word that I
Yeah.
don't understand, I'm gonna go crazy. So I want to know if you can maybe just break down the basics of astrology and how it intertwines with our everyday lives. Because I think people think of astrology and they just think of the zodiac, but astrology is actually the study of the planets, not the study of the signs. And it's more so about how the planets influence specific signs.
So the first step is definitely to calculate your birth chart. I have a free birth chart calculator on my site. You need to know your date of birth, your location of birth, so city, state, country, and your time of birth if known. If your time of birth is not known, you click unknown, or in standard astrology world, you put 12 p.m. But what's important is when you generate your chart, you do not want to pay attention to what they say your rising sign is, because that depends on your exact time of birth. And you also want to ignore your house placements, because that also depends on your exact time of birth. But the majority of the other placements should be accurate. The only thing to also watch out for is your midheaven, dependent on your time of birth, and then your moon, because the moon travels through every sign in 2.5 days. If you see that the moon is like at 0 degrees, 1 degrees, 2 degrees, and you don't know your time of birth, or it's at the tail end at 29 degrees, 28 degrees, because there's up to 29 degrees for each sign, you also want to be aware that it could be that you have the moon sign before or the moon sign after. But if it's a middle degree moon, so you look at your moon, let's say it says Sagittarius at 15 degrees. If you don't know your time of birth, there's a high likelihood that you are a moon in Sagittarius, because the moon had not switched into another sign. Practical details to know if you don't know your time of birth. But if you do know your time of birth, especially even if it's an approximation, that's better than not knowing anything at all. Your birth chart will show you a map of the stars and the planets at the exact time, date, location of your birth. And ideally, you would start to see many interpretations of what each one means. So the sun, known as our sun sign, the constellation that the sun was traveling through when you were born, when you took your first breath, that's your sun sign. And your sun sign represents your essence, your overall personality on a more general level. It's more of like the nucleus of your personality, but there's so many different associations beyond the nucleus. It also represents just kind of your core vitality, since the sun is the energy of life, how you come off when it comes to your day-to-day actions and behaviors. Now, your rising sign, only if you know your time of birth is this calculated. This is the sign that was rising at the horizon when you were born, and that imprints you with the energy of what people think you're like when they first meet you. In my case, my rising sign is the same as my sun sign. And for many people, that can be the case. So I'm a Scorpio rising and a Scorpio sun. So that just intensifies my Scorpio nature. But for many people as well, they have a rising sign that's very different than their sun sign. So remind me your rising sign.
So my rising sign is Leo, but my sun sign is Cancer.
A great
I'm a
example.
double luminary.
Yes, you're a double luminary. The luminaries are the sun and the moon, the two luminaries. And so that's a great example, because when people first meet you, your Leo nature is what catches their eye. They view you as the life of the party, popular, magnetic, passionate, self-oriented, independent, a leader. And as people get to know you more, your Cancer nucleus comes out. When you feel comfortable around people, they'll see that you can be very sensitive. You have your homebody moments. You have moments where you can intuitively read people's minds, almost psychic-like nature. You can
Everyone
also be
tells me that. My everyone tells me, Brittany, are you psychic? Because I'm like, you should do XYZ, XYZ. And they're like, Brittany, I'm doing that. How do you know? Are you spying
yeah.
on me? Are you a op?
Cancers have this very deep frequency because they're ruled by the moon. So that's another thing to keep in mind, is your rising sign is important if you know your time of birth, because it will tell you who your chart ruler is. A lot of people don't pay attention to that, but your chart ruler is like a life hack. It's like an Ori ruler, which is your divine head and your Yoruba spirituality. And so when you know your chart ruler, you can know which part of your chart to hone in on to know what you're most influenced by. So since I'm a Scorpio rising, my chart ruler is my Mars in Cancer, for better or for worse. And my Pluto in Scorpio as well, which I appreciate. It's in my first house, and that helps me transform myself on a day-to-day level. So knowing your chart ruler is really an essential part. A lot of times we focus on our sun, moon, and rising. Those are like our commonly known placements. As you get into astrology, take it to the next level by figuring out your chart ruler. So I will quickly tell you, if you have an Aries rising, if you look on your free birth chart and you see that you have an Aries rising, it can also say Aries ascendant. Then your chart ruler is Mars, the planet of action. I'm going to go ahead and throw in the equivalent of Mars in Yoruba spirituality because, like I said, I like to decolonize astrology. And the Greeks and the Romans were inspired by African mythology and deities when they named the planets what they are currently named. So Mars is the representation of Ogun in Yoruba spirituality, the
That makes
Orisha.
sense. That makes sense.
The Orisha of war, of iron, and just knowing what you want. So Mars, your Mars sign tells you what you want and how you go and you get it. It also shows what you want sexually and what might be drawn to you in life. So if you're an Aries rising, Mars is your chart ruler. If you're a Taurus rising, Venus, the planet of love and beauty, Oshun in spirit in Yoruba spirituality is your chart ruler. And if you are a Gemini rising, Mercury, the planet of communication and travel, issue, big issue energy. So Geminis are ruled by Mercury, and Cancer is ruled by the moon, Yemaya, Yemoja, depending on how you want to pronounce it. Beautiful Cancers. Yeah, I love that for Cancers. Moon ruled. And that explains why they say Cancers are so moody, because if they're ruled by the moon and the moon is switching signs every 2.5 days, they are aligned with that. Like the moon is in Sagittarius now, a Cancer might be feeling more outgoing during that time. And then when it enters Capricorn in a few days, it could be the Cancer could be feeling much more serious and reserved. So we should be nicer to Cancers. That's a lot of shifts to deal with on like every 2 days. There's some other mood that they are imprinted with. Leo, ruled by the sun, giver of life. Leo can be viewed, sun energy can be viewed as Obatala, and it's about not being afraid of how much you shine. So a lot of times people are turned off by Leos because of the ability to be confident in themselves, but it's a projection because it might mean that you're not letting yourself shine enough if you feel a certain way about Leo shining. So that's
Ooh.
of course, unevolved Leos can take this to extremes, can become self-obsessed. Of course, it can go too far, but for the most part, Leos are here to remind us that we should shine. Virgo, if you have a Virgo rising, your chart ruler is like Gemini, it's Ishu, Mercury. However, Virgos tend to internalize the energy of Mercury, and Gemini risings tend to externalize it. So Virgos are more likely to work behind the scenes on all kinds of communication related things, and only when they feel ready will they let it out. Geminis will literally let it out in real time. Kanye West is a Gemini, Trump is a Gemini, Angelina Jolie, like the big personalities that cause a lot of division are often Geminis. But it's interesting that both Gemini and Virgo are ruled by Mercury and represent the energy of Mercury in different ways. And Libra rising, similar to Taurus, is Venus ruled. So same thing, Taurus tends to focus on how pleasure can make them feel more grounded in life. And then Libra is like, they want the pleasure to lead to attracting opportunities through their relationships, especially. Taurus is more focused on their relationship with themselves first. And Libra is more really focused on their relationship with others, but they're both ruled by Venus. Scorpio Scorpio rising is ruled by Mars, like Aries, and same theme there. They tend to internalize Mars's energy first and then let it out when it's ready. Aries will always like kind of be an open book when it comes to what they want to do and who they want to go after. They won't really hide that. That will be evidence. They will take the lead and go after what they want. Scorpio is more likely to calculate, take calculated risks, but they do have an impulsive side to them because they're ruled by Mars, which is Ogun in Yoruba spirituality. And Scorpio is also ruled by Pluto, planet of transformation, which I view as Oya in spirituality, Yoruba spirituality. So Sagittarius is Sagittarius rising means that your chart ruler is Jupiter. Jupiter is a planet of luck, the largest planet in our solar system, which is why Sagittariuses are viewed as some of the happiest and luckiest and more fun spirited of the signs. It doesn't mean that's all they are, because somebody can be a Sagittarius with a lot of Capricorn energy and feel much more serious than typical Sagittariuses.
That is my mom.
Oh, yeah.
Sagittarius sun, but Capricorn placements just serious all the time. So serious.
Yeah, her Sagittarius has to be really stimulated by things beyond her Capricorn for that to really come out. So maybe like in retirement, when like she's saved up everything, she's gotten to her goals. Like, let's see how she is like when she really is established as a retired woman who's met her goals. Her Capricorn will probably still have her working in some sort of way, but sometimes we step more into the parts of ourselves as we grow older. The parts that were not as evident in our earlier stage of life start taking over. I'm noticing that with my dad, who is Taurus and had a lot of fixed Taurus energy, but now his more Cancer placements are definitely coming through when I see him with his grandchildren. I'm like, okay. Like, I wish I could have, also
I wish I could have had that.
But it's better late than never. Capricorn, as we were talking about, ruled by Saturn. That's why they're so serious. Saturn is the opposite of Jupiter in the sense of they work hand in hand, because you don't want life to only be about optimism and joy and expansion, or else we'd always be overindulging. Saturn really is about like keeping you grounded, down to earth, and facing reality. So if you're a Capricorn and rising, you're ruled by Saturn, planet of responsibility. Obaluwaye is who I associate Saturn with in Yoruba spirituality. And then Aquarius. Aquarius is ruled by Uranus and also by Saturn, a different emanation of Saturn, a more like focus on the collective, the challenges that the collective is facing, and wanting to help revolutionize those challenges. So often forward-thinking energy is Aquarius rising, very genius of the Zodiac energy. Bob Marley is my favorite Aquarius. Angela Davis is also an Aquarius.
Oprah is also an Aquarius.
Oprah's an Aquarius. Yes, that's true. So some pioneers are Aquarius placements. And then Shango is who I associate. Shango and Oya combined can be viewed as Uranus, but Shango as well alone can be viewed as the Yoruba equivalent of Uranus. And then Pisces, the last of the zodiacs, often underestimated when it comes to capacities beyond crying. But Pisces is ruled by Jupiter and Neptune. So it has two rulers, Pisces risings. And Neptune is Olokun in Yoruba spirituality. So Pisces are very profound beings, way more than just crying. They know how to dream worlds into existence. Rihanna is a very well-known Pisces. And she has a lot of Aries energy as well. So it's very beautiful when you know your chart ruler, because you can study that in your chart. So if you're new to astrology, start off with your sun sign, your moon sign, your rising sign if you know your time of birth, and your chart ruler if you know your time of birth. That's a nice introduction, but there's so much more to that. There are your house placements, the positions that the planets relate to each other, and the, I would say, transits happening over the course of your life, because the planets are always influencing different parts of your life. That's what the houses represent, different sectors. Like your personality sector is the first house. Your money sector is the second house. Communication sector is the third house. Home and roots is the fourth house. Love and creativity and dating and youth is the fifth house. Health and wellness and service and work is the sixth house. Relationships, particularly intimate one-on-one types of partnerships, marriage, but also work partnerships, that's the seventh house. Eighth house is the house of external resources. So things that have to do with inheritances, loans, scholarships, but also the psychology of what's hidden, like being able to understand the hidden psychology of your own mind and the psyche of others. So the eighth house is one of the most profound of all the houses. Ninth house is the house of education, of travel, of media, of publishing. 10th house is the house of career and legacy and reputation. 11th house is the house of friendship, social networks, and technology. And then the 12th house, I have a Scorpio sun in the 12th house in Placidus, first house in whole sign, but Placidus 12th house sun kind of explains my whole Scorpio mystique journey of thinking I was going to be secretive with it. And then it's hilarious. 12th house is the house of secrets, solitude, spiritual awakening, healing, and the underworld, not being afraid to go deep and see and face things about yourself and about the collective that other people would rather ignore. So it's also a very deep house. So even if you're new to astrology, if you look at your chart and you see you have a lot of second house energy, that means that you should study the themes of money and security. Those are naturally going to be themes that come up for you. If you have a lot of fourth house energy, same thing. It's more about home and family. It doesn't mean it will be good. It doesn't mean it will be bad. It actually probably means a blend of both, that sometimes you're going to be fascinated with the idea of starting a family. Other times you might be really frustrated with some of the elements of your past. So what I would say for if you're new to astrology is on top of your sun, rising, moon, and your house placements, look at what repeats itself often. If you have, for example, like you have a lot of Leo energy repeating itself. That is a theme that you're supposed to learn, not only from your Leo nature, but even your opposite sign of Leo is Aquarius. And it's interesting that your Saturn is in Aquarius. So I would recommend to look at what repeats itself and then kind of study what's not as present in your chart, because that can help you balance out some aspects of your personality. And that's when astrology becomes evolutionary. That's when you're like, this might be what I'm born with, but I have the power and the free will to learn and expand and grow into zones outside of my comfort. So it's a whole world. I hope that this helped as a nice introduction for people who are interested.
Thank you so much for breaking that down and explaining that. There are also two things I want to ask you to speak more about, the North Node and the South Node, which I feel like plays a huge part in our charts. So could you dive into that a little bit more as well?
Those nodes, those represent, North Node represents our evolutionary destiny, and then the South Node is more of our karmic past. The nodes spend a year and a half traveling through the signs. So currently the North Node is in Aries right now. We recorded this in July 2024. It's in Aries for another like 11 months. And the South Node is in Libra. But when you look at where the nodes are placed in your chart, it indicates what your evolutionarily growing into. It indicates what your, I would even say, higher self wants for you if you allow yourself to receive it. And then your South Node represents where you're coming from spiritually. So some astrologers could also view this, if you believe in a reincarnation, as your past life, some of the themes, or even what sun sign you might have been in the past life, or what themes were the most present for you. So for me, my North Node is in Sagittarius, my South Node is in Gemini. That even explains my connection to a lot of Geminis. My grandmother's a Gemini. The father of my children is a Gemini. My godmother is a Gemini. So sometimes your South Node even shows the patterns of people you feel most comfortable interacting with. Your North Node shows the people you might benefit spending more time with and learning from. So I have been learning from a lot of Sagittariuses, like Rachel, like I was saying. She's inspired me in so many ways. Even she was on her book publishing journey before me and was telling me tips. And then a few months later, I was able to manifest the book deal. That's very North Node in Sagittarius. So it shows you if you're willing to step out of your comfort zone, if you're willing to ask for help in the modality and sign that is your North Node. So someone might have a North Node in Cancer. It might mean that their evolutionary lesson is to learn to create a home within themselves and to feel comfortable with family, even if other parts of their chart tends to push that away. Their long-term evolutionary lesson is to heal their relationship and explore their relationship to home, to roots. Your South Node can also help you understand some of your traumas and psychological blockages. So studying your South Node helps you understand your patterns of behavior that you might have outgrown. You might be drawn to, it might be familiar to you, it might feel safe to you, but you're actually encouraged to step more towards your North Node energy. Both work hand in hand, so you don't want to completely negate or push away your South Node energy. You just want to know you've come from there, you've been familiar with there, and there's something else out there. If it's the same, if you have a North Node that's the same as your sun sign, that's an indication to really take this journey of self-development seriously, because you're going to reach a level that surpasses what you expect for yourself. So don't just think, oh, I already have made it because it's the same as my sun sign or it's the same as my rising sign. No, it wants you to deepen your exploration of what it means to be your sun sign or your rising sign, to see things beyond what you think it is. To even see things opposite of what you think it is by studying your South Node and balancing both out. So yeah, on a collective level as well, when we see what the nodes are in for the collective, it helps us understand what area we're shifting into. So this is definitely a great year. This year in 2025 are great for entrepreneurs because of the North Node in Aries. It's like the nodes have started a new cycle with the North Node in Aries. So we're being encouraged to take greater leaps of faith like Aries, to put ourselves out there more consistently like Aries, to be more spontaneous with the work that we do, and to just be leaders. So that's also good to study where the nodes are as a collective, to see what we're meant to learn as a collective.
I like to think of astrology, just a really basic understanding, especially for those who might be confused, right? Astrology is a study of the planets, right? The planets themselves are the what versus the houses are the where versus the sign is the how.
Yes.
That's how I like to think about it. So, and maybe you can explain more about the planets, but I know Mercury is the planet of communication, manipulation, so on and so forth. People will be like, oh, all Geminis are manipulative. No, every sign is manipulative. It's about how and where are you manipulative in your life.
Yeah, that's true.
Venus is like, I think the planet of love, and I'm not sure if it's relationship. You can speak about it more, but it's about how you come across. Can you go in a little more about each planet? It doesn't have to be super long, but just a basic understanding of what each planet represents in our lives.
Yes, absolutely. And when I was sharing the planetary ruler, I think that I probably gave an overview of those most. So I will focus on, especially for CEO boss babes, like knowing about your Mars. Your Mars, it's so important. It's the planet of action, and it shows just how you tend to assert yourself or not. Because, for example, with my Mars in Cancer, I'm not going to be as naturally assertive as someone who has a fire sign Mars, like Aries, Leo, or
I'm a
Sagittarius.
Leo Mars.
You're Leo Mars. So when you figure out even just like the elements, because there's the elements of water signs, Scorpio, Cancer, Pisces are water signs, fire signs, Sagittarius, Leo, and Aries are fire signs. Earth signs, Virgo, Capricorn, and Taurus are earth signs, and air signs, Gemini, Aquarius, and Libra. When you figure out the element that your Mars is in, you know the best way to flow through your life or even take action through your life. So your Mars sign shows what you're drawn to for your career choices as well. And it shows who you're drawn to romantically and sexually. And Mercury is more about the way you're thinking and communicating with people. So once again, someone who has a fire sign Mercury might be more of an outward extroverted communicator. But then someone who has an earth sign one is most likely having those thoughts within their own head or with a very trusted friend rather than being talking to strangers when they just met them. And then I would also say Jupiter, planet of luck. Since it's the largest planet in our solar system, studying your Jupiter sign and the elements shows you the best way to attract luck. Fire sign Jupiters are more likely to attract it when they just shoot their shot, even if everything isn't yet in order. Earth sign Jupiters benefit from really pacing themselves, creating foundations, making sure they have organized themselves, but you don't want to take that to an extreme where the opportunity passes you because of perfectionism. Just like fire sign Jupiters don't want to take it to an extreme where they leap on an opportunity without having done the groundwork. So that's where it's helpful to have a blend of other people in your life to also give you different perspectives and also tap into the different elements in your chart. Your Jupiter might be in a fire sign, but your Mars might be in an earth sign. It's up to you to find that balance between, oh, this is the best opportunity, says your Jupiter, and have you prepared enough for it, says your Mars.
Mhm. Got it. So now that we're basically on the topic, specifically for the boss babes, the boss bros out there, entrepreneurs and creatives, we started going into it a little bit, but I also know that there's placements like your Midheaven and so on
Yeah.
and so forth. Can we talk about specific astrological insights, placements, or techniques that you recommend for entrepreneurs and creatives looking to align their business ventures with their cosmic paths?
Yeah. Your midheaven is calculated when you know your exact time of birth. So if you do, that is a really wonderful life hack. It's your career destiny. So sometimes when people,
Oh,
yeah, when people stay in a certain path and they don't feel fulfilled by it, I often look at their midheaven and ask them, what did you really want to do when you were younger? Often what they say is more aligned with what their midheaven is. So for
that
me,
is crazy.
yeah, yeah. It's wild. It's beautiful when they have that awakening and aha moment and then understand they have the power to, even if it's through baby steps, gear themselves towards it. I'm not saying quit your 9 to 5 and immediately do what your midheaven is telling you, but at least give more hours of your week towards doing that. Or
What is your
even
midheaven? What is your midheaven in?
Leo. And so that totally explains me being in London and for acting school after the first year since 2018 that I have taken a pause from offering homegoing trips to West Africa. I'll be offering them again next year, but I made this year about me and following my passion for acting, which I had done on and off when I was younger. And I finally was like, this is the time. Neptune is also going through a transit in my fifth house, and the fifth house has to do with fame and creativity and letting your inner child do what they love. So, yes, when I was younger, I was putting on plays for my parents. I was singing karaoke. I was just pretending to be a pop star and a movie star. I was just having too much fun. Like, that's just the best way to look at it. And then it also explains my entrepreneurial mindset because Leo has to do with entrepreneurship as well.
Wow.
That blend of media, acting, and entrepreneurship is my career destiny. So your midheaven often shows you what your soul wants you to be doing. So even like people who have midheaven in Virgo, if they're doing something that's much more creative, much more like unpredictable, yes, it could be fun, but they're going to ultimately have to create more structure to it. It doesn't mean they can't be in a creative field. It just means it has to have organization and structure and more simplicity. So it could look like if you're a rock star, but you have a midheaven in Virgo, you might have to set the boundary with your personal assistant or manager and tell them, I don't want more than 10 shows in a month or in 2 weeks because I need some more simplicity to just take care of the simple things in life. I don't need to be super busy. Someone who has a midheaven in Sagittarius could say, oh no, put as many international cities on that tour list as possible. And they could be thriving because they're more in alignment with their expansive Sagittarius midheaven. So knowing your midheaven, which is only possible if you know your time of birth, is definitely a life hack to just orienting yourself or reorienting if you were kind of far away from your midheaven. Looking at it, studying it, reorients you towards your destiny as your professional path.
Wow, that is I learned about my midheaven some time ago and it literally explains who I am. I am a Taurus midheaven. And the
Mhm.
fact that I'm into fashion and beauty and food and I build beauty brands for a living. I advise beauty brands for a living is very Taurus coded. Like if it's like, oh, if I have to make content, there's literally only three things I'm making content on food because I love to cook. It's a huge part of my life. Like I love food and I love making it look beautiful. Like I'm gonna
That,
plate it so beautiful, so Taurus midheaven coded.
that is nice.
And me being when I was a kid, I always wanted to be a fashion designer. So
Oh,
it's very, again, Taurus coded or Venus inspired. So it makes
yeah.
so much sense that I decided to take a career path that is guided and that is literally rooted in aesthetics, but also longevity. I need structure. Structure is super important to me. I know my Sagittarius moon is like, fuck structure. No, me. I need structure. Like structure literally helps me get to where I need to be. I operated without structure for so long. And then once I discovered it, it's like, wait, hold on, my life is so much easier. Like I have
Yeah.
systems, I have this, I have that. Are there any other placements that we should look towards, like any planets or houses when it comes to figuring out our professional endeavors and things of that nature?
Yes. Definitely see if you have 10th house or the 10th house is placed in your chart. So all midheavens are on the 10th house, are in the 10th house naturally, but look and see what your planetary or luminaries, if any of them fall in your 10th house. So my moon in Virgo is in the 10th house. So often when people ask me how I was able to grow Know the Zodiac, I was like, I just showed up every day and wrote daily horoscopes every day. And then it kind of blew up and all these other opportunities came with it. That's very moon in Virgo in the 10th house. So what works for me may not work for someone else if they don't have as much 10th house. Me, I was literally emotionally motivated to show up and do something in a routine like way that pleases me. But someone could have a Mars in Gemini in the 10th house, that would indicate that it's not just one career path or even one relationship that would benefit them, that they would benefit from more exploration of multiple careers and they could even balance more than one more easily than someone else could. So that's really nice to see where your 10th house placements are in your chart if you have any core prominent ones. And the other third one that is an important thing to keep in mind for career would be your Mercury because it has to do with how you work with other people.
Mm.
So my Mercury is in Scorpio in the first house. So I do work really well with my own self first, but I've had to learn how to, because my Jupiter is in Libra in the 11th house. So I attract luck through community. I attract luck through being able to ask for help and receive it. So it's all about like understanding the layers. Your ideal career will not just be based on your midheaven or where your 10th house is, but also with how much you're able to integrate the influences of the other parts of your chart, how much you're able to stretch yourself out of your comfort zone, because your chart can reveal what your comfort zone is, which is often your Mars placement, is what you're comfortable being and doing and acting like. So if you can see how you can push yourself beyond your Mars placement, that's also a life hack to discovering new possibilities in your career.
So can you talk about astrocartography and how it plays a role in our lives when it comes to career, opportunities, things of that nature?
Yeah, absolutely. So astrocartography because the element, like the energy of astrology affects not just humans, but it affects people, places, and things. So the city that you choose in has an astrological influence that should be studied. The date that you decide to get married or start a business also has an astrological chart. So that's the same thing with the locations. Based on your own natal chart, it's juxtaposed with the lines that are influencing the different locations that you either already live in or choose to relocate.
Mm-hmm.
And each line is associated with a planet. So yeah, I've lived on. I currently in Cote d'Ivoire am in my Pluto line as well. So it's very interesting to see how many transformations have happened. I wrote my books there. My children have grown up and are growing up there. But there are times where it just feels like I'm constantly going through cycles of death and rebirth that are really intense to navigate. But Venus line was more of my New York era, which made sense for my modeling really blew up there and just me having a lot of fun exploring myself and my passions in New York. And so there are certain even cities and towns where you won't have that much of an influence of a line and life might just feel more neutral or even peaceful there. Or alternatively, it might feel like things are a little too chill and you need a bit of a new influence to really motivate you. And that's where I would say if you're living on your Mars line or you move to your Mars line, and you can calculate astrocartography for free as well on sites like astro.com. Your Mars line, it depends on where your Mars is placed. Because if I'm living on my Mars line with the Mars in Cancer, that most likely is going to be more of a family based type of energy for me. But someone who has maybe a Mars in Aquarius, they could find themselves constantly thinking of new ideas while living in that place, constantly thinking of innovations and inventions. So I would recommend first, if you're living somewhere that feels really intense, look at the astrocartography. It could be that you're on your Pluto or your Uranus or your Saturn line. Uranus lines often indicate places that are nice to come and visit, but you might not be able to settle there because there's so many changes. So I loved going to Salvador, Brazil. My ancestors on my mother's side were previously enslaved there. So when I go there, so many shifts and awakenings and downloads. I'm always getting them, but I know I couldn't live there because I would want more stability. My moon in Virgo needs more stability. So you might be living in on your Uranus line right now and wondering, why does it look like I can never just catch a break? I can't just be here without some sort of drama happening. When you have that awareness of your astrocartography, it helps enlighten you to what's being triggered. And you can decide, is this good for me long term, or should I consider maybe going maybe to my Venus, my moon line? Your moon line is where you feel more emotionally safe to express yourself. But once again, that depends on your house placements. If you have a moon in the 12th house, the moon line could actually activate more secrecy and even hidden affairs, things like that. So you want to know that there are layers and deeper levels to everything in astrocartography, which is why I do recommend having an astrologer do a very specific reading for you because it's very unique to each person. But the places that are often the most successful to live are your Sun, your Venus, your Jupiter lines, and sometimes your Mars lines, depending on if your Mars is placed in a place in your chart that's like productive and helpful. Because if it's a little too mellow of a place, you might stay in your comfort zone.
Got it. Got it. And one thing I feel like a lot of us talk about, especially when it comes to astrology, that I connect with people on, and they tell me, oh my God, I'm going through my Saturn return. Oh my gosh. Like, can you just talk a little bit about Saturn returns? I went through my Saturn return. Thank God it's over.
Yeah, me
Like,
too.
it was the toughest. It wasn't even tough. It was just like, how well are you going to do? I feel like I was going through tests, and I was really shown the extent of my limits and how strong my boundaries were and how bad I wanted things. But I
Yeah.
want to talk about Saturn returns and why they might feel so intense for people who are going through it. I think it starts anywhere between ages, I think it's maybe 28 and it lasts until age 30.
Yeah, it can even I use the range 28 to 31, and then you still kind of feel some of the after effects up until 32, 33. But it's usually around 32, 33 that a lot of the rewards of Saturn come through as well. So Saturn is a planet of responsibility and challenge. In old school astrology, it can be viewed as a malefic planet, but I don't necessarily, that word has a connotation of bad, but really it's more tough love. Saturn is a tough love planet. And in my book, I describe Saturn as like the professor who like gives you an 89.5, and instead of like bumping your grade up to a 90 so you could have an A 9.5, but then maybe by the time you submit your thesis you get that extra boost that you weren't expecting because you pushed through and you didn't complain. So Saturn sees the best in you, but expects you to see the best in yourself. Jupiter sees the best in you and just keeps blessing you until you see the best in yourself. Saturn is like, you have to do that work. You have to face yourself, and I'm not going to make it easy for you. If anything, I'm going to make it hard for you. But once you've learned the lessons, the rewards will be huge. So yeah, Saturn takes about 29 years to get back to the position it was in at the time of your birth. And so when you go through your first Saturn return, it can feel like the most intense growing pains. It could feel like the foundation that you were used to is all of a sudden crumbling. It just feels like you have to figure things out if you want to reach your goals. And it also feels like you're working nonstop and not necessarily seeing the rewards. And it can feel a little bit lonely. You might lose friends or realize you've outgrown them, or you're just no longer meshing with them as much. And in many ways, whatever you decide to focus on during your Saturn return, whether it's leaving a job and starting your own business, a lot of people become parents during Saturn return because it teaches them just what it really means to be adults. Um, a lot of people will write books or create a really big endeavor that they can rely on for years to come. So often I recommend going ahead and committing to something that will lead to a foundation in your life, even if you don't immediately see the rewards. Saturn is helping you build that foundation. Even things like learning financial wealth management, that's really good to do during your Saturn return so that you can enter your 30s and continue your 30s with a better foundation than you had in your 20s. And then it happens every 29 years. So my mom and I, we both went through our Saturn return in Aquarius because she had me around 29 years old. So she went through her second Saturn return when I was going through my first one. And my grandmother, she transitioned at 88 years old. So she was at the very end of her Saturn return in a Capricorn, her third Saturn return in Capricorn. And then she transitioned. So I view that as like, yeah, God saying you really learned quite a bit and finished really important cycles. And then she passed the baton to me because the day after she transitioned, my Saturn return began. That was how
Wow.
my Saturn began. So Saturn does have to do with death, and sometimes Saturn is literal and you lose someone close to you, or you go through an ego death, or even a near death experience. So it's not the easiest of transits. But once you made it through, you understand why you had to face those challenges.
Wow, it's so interesting because when I think about when my Saturn return started, it happened at like the toughest time when I was running my company, The Idea Girl. I spoke about it in another episode where I had like a copycat in my business. It was so
Oh.
intense. It was so intense. It literally started right then and there. That's when my Saturn return started. And it's like, you see what
Mhm,
happens when you are a people pleaser and you give
mhm.
so much away and you don't keep anything for yourself. Look at it. And I felt like it was one of those things as to where I really had to learn how my people pleasing tendencies were a form of manipulation to get people to like me instead of really loving myself and protecting myself and setting certain boundaries. And all I'm gonna say is thank God it's over. Like I feel like I was at the tailwind end of it, like the end of last year, like the day it ended, I was like, thank you. So it's taken some time, but I'm like, finally back into myself. My next thing is what advice would you give to our listeners on integrating astrology into their daily routines to enhance their lifestyle and professional lives? And how do you suggest that like readings can provide guidance and support in navigating career challenges and opportunities?
Yes, so I definitely will plug the KTZ app for this because that's the reason I created it. I created it because it can feel so overwhelming, even if you're interested in astrology, to really know where to begin. And our philosophy is like the moon. If we sort of start off with the cycles of the moon, a lot of our horoscopes are about where is the moon. So even you just getting curious to know what sign the moon is in when you wake up and whatever sign that is, what house is that influencing your chart? That's the energy of the next 2.5 days. So right now the moon is in Sagittarius. That's affecting my sector of money, security, self-esteem. So I know that these are good times when the moon is in Sagittarius to be focused on those types of themes. And that is just a wonderful way to flow through life without feeling like you have to do it all the time. There's seasons and cycles and literal moon led journeys for you to be on. So even just starting with where is the moon right now? And what is it teaching me in terms of the sector of my chart that it's activating? That's already going to be really helpful. And the KTZ app offers a moon calendar and also alerts letting you know when the moon has entered another sign and what the influence of that is. And so that's already wonderful. If you find the right astrologer as well, who offers daily horoscopes, reading them consistently based on your rising sign, if you know your time of birth, that really is the most accurate of all the horoscopes, the rising. But if you don't know your time of birth, you can read your sun sign. And even if you know, I recommend reading your horoscope for your rising and your sun sign. And in terms of every day, or even on a weekly, monthly basis, new moons and full moons are really good cycles of setting like intentions. New moons are for new beginnings because the seeds you plant around a new moon are likely to manifest 6 months later if you've taken the time to actually follow through on what you said you wanted, not just writing it down and not doing anything, but writing it down and consistently taking steps towards it within that 6 month cycle. Then 6 months later, at the full moon, you will start to see a manifestation of that effort. So even with this week's Capricorn full moon, you have to think back, what intentions were you setting at the beginning of the year, whether you did so consciously or not. There was a new moon in Capricorn around that time. So whatever you decided was a fresh start for you or you were ready to embark on is likely to manifest around a full moon. The full moon also is a great time for releasing the dead weights. If you know that there are things you no longer want in your life, relationship patterns you no longer want to keep perpetuating, writing them down, shredding, burning the paper, throwing it away, being in the shower, doing a release ritual and imagining the dead weight just kind of going down the drain when the water goes down the drain. There's so many ways that you can find a relationship with the cycles of the cosmos. And I highly recommend starting with the moon and taking it from there. Once you have gotten used to the cycles of the moon, you can do the same thing with all the other planets. Mercury has a cycle, Venus has a cycle, Mars has a cycle. You're going to get curious, where's Mars right now? Like it's about to enter Gemini on the 20th. It'll be in Gemini for 6 weeks. So when you know Mars is in Gemini, as a collective, we're going to feel a bit more social and a bit more adventurous than we did when Mars was in Taurus these past 6 weeks. And it was more about like the daily grind. So start with the moon and then get curious about what all of the other planets' cycles are.
That honestly explained so much. Dossé-Via, thank you so much for breaking this all down. I hope our listeners learned a lot because, again, I feel like astrology is such a controversial topic for many, depending on what your religious or your spiritual background is. You know, some people might think like astrology is the devil, some people might feel that way, but I look at it as a tool. Hey, it's not something for you to live by. I'm a very big believer in take the meat, leave the bones. I feel
Yeah.
like it's a tool, again, a tool for understanding yourself a little bit more, because you might be a Leo, but then you meet another Leo and you're like, we're completely different. That's because everyone is truly a unique individual. And I feel like that's what astrology does. It helps us understand our unique blueprint in the
Yeah.
cosmic universe, like to know that you were born in this one place at this one time, and that there's no one else in the world that's like you. Thank you for breaking this all down. Can you just share if there's anything, any endeavors, any projects that you're releasing? Please let us know what they are and how we can support you.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for this opportunity. I feel so like your Cancer energy works well with my Mars in Cancer. So it felt before. Um, and I am excited about the release of the Know the Zodiac app at the relaunch for iOS, and then it'll be also a relaunch for Android. So end of August. And the best way to stay in tune with that is if you have iOS, you can already download the Know the Zodiac app there and get ready for a message letting you know to upgrade to the new version at the end of August. And if you have Android, sign up for our newsletter. Anyone can sign up for the newsletter, but we'll be letting you know when the official drop is. So excited about that. That will be a way to get your birth chart for free and start to learn about your chart and get your access to your horoscopes, compatibility readings, and also astrological forecasts and voice notes and videos with me where I drop insights on what's happening astrologically. So it's like having a personal astrologer in your fingertips or earbuds. Really grateful for all of the work that's gone into it and so excited for the world to see the new version. And I'm also really excited about my first children's book coming out in October 15th. It was inspired by my children, Nova and Remy, and the adventures that we have living in the motherland. My Signs and Skymates book is back in Abidjan, but the paperback version of that is coming out August 6th. So probably right around the podcast. If you happen to be listening to this before August 6th, I am offering a bonus gift of a compatibility report. So as we were talking about, getting curious about other people's charts, that's why I was passionate about it. And like, if you guys pre-order this, I will give you a compatibility reading with a partner of your choice and help you understand the dynamics of your chart. So that's August 6th that it comes out. And then Melanin Magic, a young mystic's guide to African spirituality. That has been so much fun to write and to put together because my kids literally have been inspiring me through the entire process, and seeing their joy and just being able to, it's a full circle moment when it's even like connected to my melanin magic and melanin agency with the title. And it's just a beautiful full circle moment of knowing that coming to the motherland and being an educator has allowed me to create this offering for children to love their roots and love their African nature, even if they've never touched foot in the motherland. So that comes out October 15th.
Listeners, not so CEOs out there, let's run it up for Dossé-Via, please. If you got some kids, cop the book for your children. If you are interested in learning who you're compatible with or learning who your sky mate is, please get the book. And you said you get a compatibility reading for free if you get the
Yeah.
book
Mm-hmm.
before August 6th.
Yep, that's
For
exactly it.
August 6th, where can our listeners follow you on the internet?
Dossé-Via, Dossevia is my name, Instagram and Twitter. And then on TikTok, it's Dream with Dossé-Via, which is the name of my EP. So that's the best way. And then my website is dossevia.com, and you can subscribe to my newsletter, submit your pre-order receipts there. And I'm really just so happy to have connected with you. And
Dossé-Via, thank you so much for being here. I am so, so, so grateful for this conversation. I feel like I learned something with every single interview that we do. I am so grateful for your time. And to our listeners, thank you so much for tuning in on today's episode of the Not So CEO Talk Show. Until next time, guys, bye. Thanks for tuning in to the Not So CEO Talk Show. If you love what you're hearing, hit that subscribe button and leave us a review. To stay in the loop, stack our newsletter, The Paper, and follow us on social media at NotSoCEO. In case you need assistance with building your brand or you're a creative wanting to go from freelancer to founder, book an office hour session with me on our website at notsoceo.co. Until next time, remember, being self-made shouldn't compromise self-care. This is Not So CEO, signing off.